Welcome to the College of Complexes. This is our 431st meeting since we started in February 2009. We put a speaker on every week, a different subject. We require a speaker to take a position on an issue or express a point of view. They have to be for or against something. We don't care what it is. We give our speaker an hour to make a presentation. They go over an hour, we cut them off. If anybody interrupts the speaker, remind the interrupter, we'll listen only one fool at a time. It's one of our rules. Then we have question and answers from the audience, not speeches. Then we have remarks, rebuttals. Everybody in this audience that wants to gets 5 minutes at the podium here to respond to what the speaker had to say for or against. And our speaker gets the last word, gets a comment, and close the meeting. That's how it works. We have someone here who agreed to do some timing tonight, so on the rebuttals, we're going to keep you to 5 minutes because someone will time us and it will work. And that way, I'm warning you now. So because this is kind of a hostile issue sometimes, and opinions vary. So 5 minutes each and no more. All right? Thank you very much. Anyway, and now's the time. Anybody has any announcements they want to make? Now's the time to do it. Anybody? Any announcements? Come on up here. Make your announcement.
Tuesday is the last day to register to vote. So I have some forms if you have not, or if you want to take them and give them to other people that you think may not have registered. I have some mail-in forms. As long as it's dated on the 9th, it's good. And also there was some articles in the paper about somehow a California company had set up voting online, and it's in preparation for, they hope, in the future, but they're not counting that as valid. So they had several articles in the paper telling people that if they did it online, they still need to submit that paper form this year. Thank you.
Any other announcements? Anybody wants to make? Now's the time. Get it out of your system. All right. I have one short announcement. There's 2 signs up here, say Beto. We brought them for our speaker's talking about Beto, and my wife bought the signs. She paid $5 each for them. So if somebody wants to buy a sign, there they are, $5. Break-even prospect. Anyway, our speaker next week is Jim Gatewood. He's going to talk about J. Frank Norris and the Top of the Hill Casino. He's an author. It should be a good presentation. So that'll be good. It's on your itinerary. I'm not going to read all this. On October 20th, from impermanence to freedom. Jan Lee, PhD, is going to talk about that. It's on the itinerary. Again, I'm not going to read all this. On October 27th, I recognize that only thing to fear is fear itself. Julie Britton, she's sitting right back there. She's our speaker back then. So that will be our speaker on October 27th. So you ought to come and listen to her. She just spoke up here a minute ago. Anyway, on September 3rd, our lessons from Karl Marx, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That's John Beasley. He's sitting right there. He'll be our speaker. So he's very good at what he does, and it should be quite interesting. And it's on the itinerary. You can look at it. On November 10th, don't like fake news, then you should not be an American Indian. That's Gary Foster. That's on there. He'll be talking about that. And November 17th on the power of small numbers, Tony Robinson, president of Access Design Build and joint professor at Environmental Sustainability, SMU. He'll be here to talk about on the power of small numbers. It's on your itinerary. And Thanksgiving we won't have a meeting that particular weekend, and then we'll be into December. So if anyone wants to be a speaker, let you know the next open date is December 1st. So on with tonight. Our speaker tonight is Michele Valentino. She spoke here before. I can't forget what it was about. She'll tell us. And she's a certified positive psychology practitioner and a concerned citizen who will draw from her own personal life experience to make a case for why Beto O'Rourke has the values, background, and skills that are needed to usher in a new era of American politics that transcends political tribalism, super PACs, and works for the common good. So without further ado, please give a what's the problem?
People shouldn't mumble.
Oh, no mumbling. That was another thing.
No mumbling.
No mumbling.
You can
All right.
mumble, but not mumble.
All right, without further ado, please give a very warm welcome to Michele Valentino, our speaker.
She has to leave her phone. You're right, yeah.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Warm it up. Big warm it up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm very happy to be back here. I've been here before, and I enjoy all of you. I enjoy what you do here, and I am grateful, really, to be here to share with you why I support U.S. senatorial candidate Beto O'Rourke, who I consider to be one of the most authentic and courageous candidates to ever run for public office. I definitely identify with Beto and his message. When I hear him speak, it is like hearing myself speak. If I were running for office, I would be running the same kind of campaign. The reasons why I connect with Beto are deeply personal to me. Today, I'm willing to open my heart and share with you my truth. It all began before Beto was even born. Growing up, my dad was a funeral director, and my family lived in the funeral home. And so I got to see, people's reaction when somebody would die. And what I noticed was that nobody ever talked about how much money they made, how many cars they owned, how much property they owned, who they voted for. What they talked about, though, is how that person touched their life. And that made a very big impression on me. It struck me.
The sound.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Sorry.
Buzzing back here.
Buzzing back there.
I remember thinking to myself, because I was in this funeral home, and people died. And I remember thinking to myself, there are no banks in heaven. There's no political parties in heaven. There's no Wall Street in heaven. So I said to myself, who do I want to be? And where do I want to end up? And I came from a family that was a faith-based family. So I believed that there was life after death. And so I made a decision, that the kingdom that I saw was really not of this world. I made a decision right then and there who I wanted to be. And I think I was only 12 years old at the time. I decided that I wanted to be the kind of person that made a positive impact on people's lives. And this influenced me in every aspect of my life. It influenced me as a wife of 50 years. It influenced me as a mother of 3 wonderful children. It influenced me, as a life coach. You're okay? It influenced me as an owner of a small business. And then I devoted many years of my life to community service, working directly with people of all ages and backgrounds, especially at-risk teenagers. I had many rewarding experiences, but there was one that stands out from all the rest, where I truly felt I was really making a difference. I was working at a orphanage, and I was giving a workshop, a 5-day workshop. And when I first got there, they had wanted no part of me. Okay? They weren't interested in being forced to take this workshop. And so I just went into my car, and I just loved them. I just loved them. And so little by little, they started to come around. And then towards the end, okay, I got a wonderful, wonderful gift. One of the boys that gave me the hardest time came up to me afterwards and said, "Mrs. Valentino, I heard what you said, and I did what you said, and it really made a difference." And he started to go on and on about how it made a difference. Well, let me tell you, going home in the car that night, I can't even put into words what it felt like. I was so filled up. I felt so much like I was living my purpose. And I said to myself, there's no physical, material thing that could ever do this for me that I'm experiencing now. And so I continued my work in the community. And I worked with a lot of the poor. I worked with a lot of people that were disadvantaged. And I was part of the Welfare to Work program. Now I know a lot is being said, okay, and I understand that some people do abuse the system. But what I found out through personal experience is that most of them do not. They really desperately want to be a very productive part of society. And all they really needed was a little bit of help. And so I was part of this mentoring program. And so I got to see, okay, just how important that is, okay? And I remember growing up, because I went to Catholic school, and I remembered a passage from Scripture that said, "Give generously to the poor, not grudgingly, for the Lord your God will bless you in everything you do. There will always be some in the land who are poor. That is why I'm commanding you to share freely with the poor and with other Israelites in need." And so I tried to do that. I still am doing that. And I can't tell you what it feels like, because the words are not adequate when you actually help somebody else. It is something that I kind of came to one basic conclusion on. And that is that you can't get what you want at somebody else's expense.
Amen.
What we do to others, we really do to ourselves. And so I try to live my life, okay, from that perspective. And then I thought about it, okay, and that helped me, okay, to work through some of the challenges that many people are faced with today. Some of these challenges have caused so many to succumb to the messages of fear and divisiveness. But I relied on my faith and the golden rule to guide me. Scripture tells us that all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. And second, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. So that really is the essence, okay, of me. And so, you're probably wondering, okay, what does this have to do with the Beto campaign?
Yeah.
Well, the answer is that I saw for myself firsthand the degree to which elections can affect the lives of millions of people. It is what brings me here today. I want to be represented by a senator who has the values, background, and skills to bring us together for a higher purpose. What sets Beto apart is his humility, empathy, courage, and ability to compromise, which are qualities that I believe all great leaders must have. So let me give you some examples of things that I really like. I share his vision of one Texas. What is one Texas? Well, what it means is, and I agree with him, when he looks at all the people in Texas, he's really not seeing a Democrat, a Republican, an independent. He's seeing all people that he cares about. And so he made it a cornerstone of his campaign to travel to all 254 Texas counties, even to places where no candidate has ever gone, and to places where they flat out disagree with him. And this is something that I think is very important and very necessary, because we're all in this boat together, all of us. He is genuine and sincere, and listens and wants to understand their needs regardless of their politics. I'm a city girl, but I have family in rural areas, country folk, and I care a lot about them. I'm very familiar, okay, with what they have to go through and what their challenges are. And I really like the idea, okay, that Beto can value the rural Texan as much as he values the urban Texan. For instance, he's very fluent with respect to the issues facing rural areas whose needs are often overlooked. For instance, in many rural areas, they're shutting down their hospitals. And he cares about this. He is deeply concerned. And so he fought for Medicaid expansion to ease the financial burden on small hospitals who treat many uninsured people. He had a feeling for the dwindling workforce. He cares about the dwindling agricultural workforce. He believes that the loss of farm workers can be helped by humane immigration reform, linking migrant laborers with farmers and protecting undocumented workers. He has proposed extending federal crop insurance benefits to all farmers rather than just a few. He sponsored legislation to encourage public investment in broadband infrastructure in rural areas, making it easy to apply for jobs, do homework, read the news, and even fight wildfires. Healthcare. Well, this one is really close to home for me. This is an issue that matters, really matters to me. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, my family experienced what it was like to be penalized for pre-existing conditions. Shortly after starting a small business, my husband suffered a heart attack. Our premiums skyrocketed to the point
where I was forced to get a job in a big company that I really didn't like in order to get group coverage. Many individuals and families will find themselves in the same predicament if pre-existing protections of the Affordable Care Act are removed. Beto believes that health care is a moral issue that transcends politics, and I believe I am in agreement with that. He considers it a right, not a privilege. He voted against a health care bill that would have led to the loss of benefits for millions of Americans. He supports these health care reform steps, which I will say, I will read these to you, but I will add something at the end on what I really think we need to do. Improving the Affordable Care Act by stabilizing insurance markets, guaranteeing payments to subsidies, incentivizing insurers to participate in the exchanges, especially in underserved counties. That's that rural America I'm talking about. Creating universal coverage, whether it be through a single payer or dual payer system. Creating a public options on the exchanges so that Americans are guaranteed affordable coverage. Using the government's purchasing power to lower premiums and purchase drug costs and lower prescription drugs. Expanding Medicaid to cover more Texans, especially vulnerable children, the disabled, and the elderly. As we speak, 4.3 million Texans, including over 600,000 children, do not have health care coverage. They are forced to go to the emergency room as their only option. This drives up the costs and increases the burden on taxpayers. I'm confused. If this is an example of Texas values, I don't understand it. I mean, healthcare is dealing with people's lives, keeping people alive. I mean, this is the essence of valuing life. So I don't understand this. So James chapter 2, called Faith and Deeds, kind of like sums it up for me. What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but has no deeds? Can such faith save him? Suppose a brother or sister is without clothes and daily food. If one of you says to them, "Go in peace, keep warm and well fed," but does nothing about their physical needs, what good is it? In the same way, faith by itself, if it is not accompanied by action, is dead. Immigration. Beto O'Rourke has humanized the debate over immigration. Beto rushed down to the border and spoke out against the administration's zero-tolerance policy that snatched children out of the arms of their parents and put them in cages. Some of them are still not reunited with their families. Beto believes, and I do too, that any honest immigration reform must reflect the value of immigrants, refugees, and asylum seekers by providing a path to work, family reunification, and citizenship. Beto believes that much of the strength, success, and security of our state and country depends on the immigrants who contribute to our society. Beto supports passage of the DREAM Act. He advocates for the modernization of the visa system to allow U.S. employers to find workers for jobs that American workers can't fill. those farmers in rural America, they're having a hard time finding people to work. Compromise. The ability to compromise is about as American as you can get. Without it, there would be no United States of America. At the Constitutional Convention of 1787, 12 men came together and they overcame their deep-seated differences, just like we have today, to collaborate and compromise for the common good. In other words, our country was born out of compromise. Beto O'Rourke is known for his willingness to work across the aisle. He was awarded a prize for civility in public life from the Allegheny College in Pennsylvania. He received praise from both sides of the aisle and set social media on fire when he went on a 1,600-mile bipartisan road trip with Republican Congressman Will Hurd. Jeff Flake and Chris Coons were not the first ones to do this. He accepts responsibility. Beto has shown his ability to accept responsibility for his mistakes, learn from them, and use them to make himself a better person. As a positive psychology practitioner, I will tell you that human growth, personal growth, is contingent on our ability to learn from our mistakes, to forgive, and to let go. And I applaud him for that. Fear-mongering, this is a big one. This is something that he really, really does not like. He's vehemently against it in all its forms. And this resonates with me due to my background in positive psychology, because I understand how the brain works. The amygdala is the part of the brain that relates to fear and emotional response. The neocortex is the rational part of the brain that relates to critical thinking and reasoning. When we are in a fear state, hear this, the brain is unable to create long-term solutions. Beto intuitively knows this. I know for myself personally that every decision that I ever made out of fear was a disaster. It never worked for me. And so that's one of my big life lessons that I've learned. For thousands of years, fear has been used as a tactic to manipulate and control human beings, preventing them from tapping into their own intuition and wisdom to assess a situation. I'll give you an example. God is good. God sends us messages to help us in some of the strangest ways. But there is a scene, there's scenes, okay, from the movie Wizard of Oz that really kind of like is a metaphor for us on what I mean by this. Just think about Dorothy and all her friends and how scared they were and all this. They had to find the wizard to solve their problems. And so what did they do? They finally found the Emerald City. And what did Dorothy do? She pulled back the screen and exposed the wizard. And what was that wizard trying to do? He was trying to do just what I said. He was trying to make them afraid so that they didn't look to themselves to see their own value and their own power and their own wisdom and think for themselves. And so that is one of the biggest metaphors, I think, for what's going on here today. Personal attacks. Beto does not engage in personal attacks. Matter of fact, recently, he went to the defense of his opponent, Ted Cruz, when he was being harassed in a restaurant. And he went publicly and made an, responded publicly and said, that Ted Cruz and his wife did not deserve that. And so I said, that is not surprising of me. That is a reflection of who Beto really is. In the best-selling book, The Four Agreements, it talks about the power of words and how using the word to spew false information or spinning something to intentionally manipulate a situation or spread false rumors has a rippling effect that is not based in truth. The energy behind it is karmic. Those who start these rumors are held responsible in a spiritual sense. I remember my pastor when I was in the fifth grade coming into our class, and he talked about this. And he said, what it's like when you gossip is it's like going up to the top of the roof of your house with a pillow and tearing open the pillow and letting all the feathers go to the wind. And they fly all over the place. And you have no control over where those feathers go. And that's why gossip, is so toxic. Soon, we will be bombarded with political ads. Some of them are very informative, but many are negative and are intentionally designed to play to our fears and prejudices. This will add to the already existing wave of collective psychological trauma that is being inflicted on us on a daily basis. It is causing stress and anxiety, and it is not good for our health. We Texans are fortunate to have a very unique candidate like Beto O'Rourke. He's really not a typical Democrat. He doesn't play by the party playbook. He doesn't. He's his own man. He's like a breath of fresh air. And he is about people, not PACs. The Founding Fathers did their homework. They studied history and understood why republics always seem to fail, resulting in dictatorships. So they created a government with a brilliant set of checks and balances, deriving its authority from the consent of the governed. That's us. They ultimately relied on the goodness of the American people to make sure that it is properly maintained. I'm going to stop here for just a minute and just tell you from my heart that I have friends that have all different kinds of political affiliations. And I love every single one of them. They're good people. And I get together with them, with my family, and we have a ball. And we know we disagree, okay? But we still love each other and respect each other. Our democracy is hanging on for dear life. Many of our elected officials are looking the other way and are too busy pleasing their big donors to stop. We are the last line of defense. Our moment has come. It's time to throw the money changers out of the tent. It's time to let them know that this country belongs to us. We will not allow them to subvert our power and usurp for themselves the reins of government for their own gains. So, if you want a senator who loves his country and opposes the Constitution, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator who knows how to reach across the aisle and compromise, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator who supports an economy that benefits all Americans, not just the top 1%, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator who opposes any budget that gives huge tax rates for the rich while cutting Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a compassionate senator who puts a human face on immigration, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator who supports equal rights for all Americans, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator who refuses to engage in fear-mongering and personal attacks, vote for Beto O'Rourke. If you want a senator you can trust, who is responsive to the people, not big donors, vote for Beto O'Rourke. Beto has said over and over again that no significant positive change in our country's history has ever come about on its own. It comes about because we, the people, get involved and demand it. On November the 6th, the people of Texas can make history and set an example for others to follow, to prove that an election can be won without selling our souls to big corporate interests. Let us seize this moment and usher in a new era in American politics by electing Robert Ryan Beto O'Rourke to the United States Senate. My name is Michele Valentino, and I approve this message.
Yep.
Yeah, you get to stay there and answer questions.
Play it the mic a little longer. Get a little battery.
Are we timing the question?
No.
Or-
Obviously, when you research Beto, or how do you pronounce it?
Beto.
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 I'm not sure it's his real name,
It's
but
not.
nickname.
Can I stop you just for a second, with all due respect? Beto was a nickname given to him when he was 5 years old. It was a nickname out of affection for him. It is the Spanish nickname for the word Robert, which was his name. So that's where it comes from. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I know that when I looked on Google, I didn't see a lot of these negative articles, but when I started to search on DuckDuckGo, I found some negative articles. Of course, Google is owned by certain organizations that don't want that. What I'm wondering is, how do you address the issue of his criminal past and his family's criminal past that's tracked back to the drug cartels in Mexico?
Okay, I'll be happy to answer that question from myself personally, from my own personal experience. As I said before, I'll repeat it. One of the things that I look for in a leader is his ability to accept responsibility for his mistakes and admit them, use them, grow from them, and evolve. Okay, he has humility. Okay, he's willing to do that. And I know that myself personally, in my own life, I look back on my life, and there's a lot of things that I did and said that I wish I didn't say. And I know what the power of love and forgiveness is. There was one lesson that took me a whole year, one lesson in forgiveness that took me a whole year to work through. So I don't stand in judgment of people that make mistakes. I don't. That belongs to a higher power to pass judgment. What I'm saying is, I look to see, as someone that I want representing me, as someone who learns from it. If you read the life of Abraham Lincoln, who is I consider our greatest president, He didn't start off a great president at all. He really evolved as he went along. And he did it by learning from his mistakes. George Washington is the same way. He says in his memoirs that it was learning from the experience, okay, that made him go forward and make the right decisions going forward. So none of us are perfect. And I give him permission to be human, but I will hold him accountable. I expect him to accept responsibility and to change and to learn from it and to say he's sorry.
Okay, you have a background in psychology. So this, I think this is appropriate to bring up the issue of projection. You've given us an incredible picture of this candidate, yet I haven't found anyone in politics that I can give such a glowing, white as the driven snow kind of account to. Are you projecting?
Well, I'm just speaking my truth. And I'm telling you what I see in this man. I've listened to him, I've watched him, and I like what I see. I'm not telling you he's perfect. And I'm not trying to paint that kind of person. My speech today, and I will repeat it, my speech has to do with how I identify with him. I use my personal life experiences, okay, as a basis for making that observation about this candidate. And I'm a tough sell. I am not an easy sell, let me just say that right off the bat. But I go to that higher place. And just as I try to live my life by the golden rule and those two great commandments, I look. Who is this man choosing to be? He is not your typical Democrat. He belongs to the new Democratic coalition. He is not he's for term limits. He said himself he's only going to run for 2 terms if he wins. And so he has no real political agenda, ambition other than that. And so that means something to me too. So I don't look at him, I look at him as his own man, something different, something unique. And I think we really need it. We really need someone like this right now, because we really are not going to get very far if we can't learn to work together to solve our problems. When I left the house, did not left today, but yesterday, I lost a very valuable ring that belonged to my grandfather that he willed to my son. And so it fell behind a very heavy piece of furniture, and I couldn't get to it. So I had to ask for help. And so the people that came to help me, okay, were all different than me. None of them thought the same as I do about politics or anything else. But we worked together for a higher purpose. And they helped me move that table because they cared. This is who we are as Americans. Put on the TV. Look at that game today, the Texas OU game. You see all these players, white, black, whatever, hugging each other, okay, and celebrating together, all around one common goal. That is what is really American. That's what our forefathers did. They did it in the Declaration of Independence, and they did it in the Constitution. And they set forth in the preamble to the Constitution what the real purpose of government really, really is. To form a more perfect union. Not a bunch of people separated, no, union. To provide for the general welfare. And all the historians all say the same thing about what the interpretation of that really means. What it means is that our common needs must be met. Our health, okay? Our safety, all these things. This is what we're about in this country. And I have faith in us, I really do. I think we all have good hearts. I think we're all good people. And I think those wizards, okay, behind that screen are manipulating us for their own gain. And I refuse to allow them to do it. I'd rather sit down and love each other, which I do, and talk about it and solve the problem and work together. That's how problems get solved.
No, I just wanted to make a comment. If Beto was a Republican, it wouldn't matter to me. He's a Democrat. I mean, he is just a breath of fresh air.
Well,
in this, you know, what we're all going through.
Well, with all due respect, okay, I think there's some Democrats that I don't consider a breath of fresh air.
Right.
And there's some Republicans that I don't think are
Right,
a
but
breath of fresh air.
he's definitely.
He definitely is. And he's not phony. He's authentic. And that is why he's resonating all over Texas.
Yeah.
Because the people can't be fooled. When you talk from your heart and you're for real, they get it.
Yep.
And so that's the phenomena that's really happening now. And I'm very grateful that we have him. I think God sent him to us, really. I really mean that. Because we need somebody like that can bring us together. And he really works very, very well across the aisle. He's very well liked in Congress. And the people on the other side of the aisle really, really like him, and they like working with him. And we have to have that. We just have to.
Michelle, maybe a couple of 3 questions. Between Ted Cruz and Beto, which one do you think would be the strongest at securing our borders?
Well, I would suggest, okay, that you don't ask me that. What I suggest is you go and read where they stand on the issues. I know how Beto feels about it, okay? And you can read how Ted Cruz feels about it. I don't see deporting 12 million people as a solution. I think, or 20, whatever it is. I think that this is one case that requires people sitting down and cooperating and working it out. Because like these rural farmers, okay, and there's a lot of businesses that depend on these people to work. And so, and a lot of Americans just don't want to do these jobs. And so they contribute. But more importantly than anything, and this is where Beto comes from and we really, really agree. They're human beings. And we are all connected. Every single major religion has some form of the golden rule. They know something, and what they know is that we're all connected whether we like it or not. It's like, those old IBM forms that had the carbons, with 2 or 3 copies under it. What you put on that first copy, okay, gets all those other copies. And we are, whether we like it or not, we're connected. And I see it. I have really paid attention, and I see it in action. And when something shows up in my life that I don't like, or a problem, or a real challenge, the first question I ask myself, Michelle, did you do this to somebody else? That's the first question. And a lot of times, I have that humility and ability to grow, and I say, yes, I did.
Okay, second question. Which one of the 2 candidates then do you think would protect our constitutional Second Amendment the best, the strongest?
Well, Beto says, I'll tell you what Beto says. He says he is not against getting rid of the Second Amendment. Matter of fact, he and his uncle go out hunting all the time, and he taught him how to use a rifle. What Beto O'Rourke is saying is, I'm against the military style weapons and those big, bullets there that go with it. And he's for, really reasonable common sense background checks. But to say, okay, that he's against the Second Amendment. This is the false argument that I'm talking to you about. This is where the manipulation is.
Right.
And so I feel like, you know, if you listen to what he has to say, he is really making a lot of sense. Because I don't think the founders, when they made the Second Amendment, thought about those military weapons, okay, on our streets. So but at the same time, he says, I own a gun and I use it. And people need to be free, okay, to own guns. It's part of the Second Amendment. He's not against it. But you don't spin it. But what's happening is, and this is the part that requires awareness on our part, we have to really be aware of how we're being played. Okay? So we're taking all these good, honest gun owners in the state of Texas, okay? And we're playing to that and twisting it and make fear. Oh, this guy over here wants to take your guns away, but I'm not going to take your guns away. It's an insult to our intelligence. You listen to what the candidates say. Either you believe them or you don't.
Okay, well, which one of the two candidates, with Ted Cruz or Beto, has socialist leanings, would be more likely to be socialist and embrace socialist policies?
Well, you have to help me out here on what you think socialism is, because everybody that collects a Social Security check or accepts Medicare is accepting a certain form of socialism. Socialism is just nothing more than a word, okay? And let's not make it interpreted in such a way that it is not. I know that Bernie Sanders always talks about democratic socialism. I like, because I'm a business person, came from a family of businesses, I prefer to take a different, way of describing it. I like to talk about compassionate capitalism. Because I don't think, okay, anything is worth the loss of our soul. So anything, okay, that helps people, helps our neighbor like it helps ourselves, is coming from a higher place, and it's part of those two commandments, and that's very real for me, and I live by it. Yes, ma'am.
Have you read his platform?
His platform, I read his issues, if that's what you mean, what he stands for on the issues.
Well, there are, his platform has 17 paragraphs and sections.
Yeah, and he talks about each issue and what he stands for.
And you didn't address that tonight at all.
Well, I didn't want to spend 2 hours. I tried to narrow it down, okay?
I was hoping we would hear something about the candidate. All we've heard is he's a nice boy.
Well, I'm sorry, but that was not my intention. My intention was to use my own life to make a story for why I think he's going to be good for this state. Yes.
Glancing at some of the problems that he had, burglary was one. What was that about?
I really don't know, to tell you the truth, and so.
Well, see, he was arrested for burglary. You're not aware of that?
Well, I heard something about it, but I don't know if they did anything about it, and I don't want to pass judgment on something that I don't know.
Well, being a candidate, I think it's important to know if somebody was arrested for something.
The charges were dropped. They were dropped. It's better than being a rapist. Charges were dropped.
Well, let's not get that started, but I would love to.
But thank you for your question. Any more? Okay.
I think you get to sit down.
Thank you.
Yeah, now it's your turn to talk. And remember, you got 5 minutes, not more. So, no, 5 minutes.
Time it.
Yeah, she's timing it.
Well, we always give 10 to John, and we always give 10 to 2 or 3 others.
Well, it's 5 minutes tonight, because this is a volatile issue.
Who's timing it?
I was, but, hold on. Yeah. Wait, I'm not ready. Okay.
Ding. This is working out. Which one? This right.
Oh, right, yeah. Any of them are working. It sounds like it's not working.
There you go.
Okay. I'll put my mouth on. I really want to thank our speaker. This is what intellect and emotion together looks like. Her presentation.
All emotion.
No. Her topic was why I identified with him. That was the topic. And wonderful. A psychologist has said two major motivations in life are, one is service and the other is domination. Am I correct on that? Politicians are elected to serve, and that's one of the things that bothered me about recent events in politics. Someone said, we'll do what a majority of the Republicans want. Where's the balance of power there? Public service, I was assaulted many years ago. And it's not something that happens one time. Every time this issue comes up, particularly in public domain, you feel the anger again at lack of response, people turning back. That's the thing that bothered me most this week, was the highest echelons in our government simply turned their backs. And I heard them say, poor Kavanaugh, what are they doing to his family? How, of course he was all right for him to get up and be angry and act like he did. Well, when a woman is assaulted, or a man, they have to get up and go to work the next day. They have to put on the face. They have to act, especially if they're in a service position. They have to act in a way that is of service to other people. They don't scream and yell and make excuses. I ended up having to drop out of graduate school at that point, but I was the only person, I have no family support, I was the only person that was responsible for taking care of me. So you have to continue. You can't just say, oh, look what they're doing to me, look what he's done to me. A presenter touched on several of the points I wanted to present about fear in my speech coming up in a couple of weeks. But one thing that jumped out at me tonight was the statement about people being aggressive. It does something to you. It does something to your soul. And I've recently, we had a speaker saying that the professor from SMU said what's happening and what the problem with the world is now is white men. And of course, if I were a white man, I wouldn't like to hear that. But I thought about that for a while, and I thought, but every person who does something like that is also a victim. So I can forgive. As our presenter said, I can forgive. Men were brought up to be this way. So why blame them and judge them? I don't agree with some of the things that happen, but I'm also told in social work classes that whatever population is the dominant one, they usually act this way. I mean, dominant as far as the most there. So, if it were, I mentioned the fact that sometimes it's easy to work with Hispanic children because they don't show as much aggressive anger. And someone said to me, that's because they're not in the dominant position. Whatever group is the dominant one tends to act this way. So, and one thing about that I wanted to mention that really cinched the deal with me for Cruz was when a man who was DNA proved that he was innocent of his, I believe he assaulted. When the DNA proved that he was innocent, Cruz did not want him released from prison. I thought, what kind of a human being is that? That's what cinched the deal for me. Thank you.
Next. Double dose.
Well, the best news of the day is that Brett Kavanaugh has been confirmed. That is good news for America. May God bless Brett Kavanaugh and give him a long, healthy life. Folks, we have had 2 solid weeks of Democrats smearing and demeaning and trying to destroy Judge Kavanaugh, hurting his family, his reputation, his career, bringing out all these outrageous charges from 36 years ago, no corroboration, but condemning him and assuming guilt before innocence.
Is this about Beto?
No, I'd say not.
And so let's stay focused on what the presenter.
He's talking.
Yeah,
He's
but
not talking about what the presenter talked about.
For against what the speaker had to say.
Yes, this is a response to the speaker.
don't subtract from my time. This confirmation was an American scandal played out for all the world to see. This virtual torture of this good judge, all brought to us by a Democratic Party that will sink to any new lows, do anything necessary to win back its power.
It's not his turn to speak, but if you want the rest to start talking about our county points,
He has
be quiet.
He has
This is
his
about
free
Beto.
speech.
This is about,
common practice.
this is about Beto.
He has his free speech and he can connect it to Beto.
Okay, let's hear
All
it.
right?
Yeah.
He
So
can
hear him
connect
out.
it to Beto. All right. So we all have the right for our free speech, whatever our position is.
Unless you're
He
female.
sees how it ties together that he's.
No, unless you're male in this
Okay,
case.
all
Shut
right,
up.
please.
Yeah, he's a man.
They
Put
told
him
me to
down.
shut up.
Let's let him continue, and then you have an opportunity.
All right. All this brought to us by a Democratic Party that will sink to new lows, do anything necessary to win its power. Most Americans have not seen such a wretched performance in their lifetime. Do you see love thy neighbor out of these Democrats? Where was that? What a decent, good, honest citizen would vote for any Democrat. Who's going to reward them? Never mind Beto, but he will be one of them. And don't ever fool yourself. He will be a team player. He will support open borders.
He does.
Open borders. He has said so. All countries, folks, have borders. They aren't a country. They're a territory if they don't have borders. We won't know who's in our country, who's in our city, who's on our block, next door, next apartment. What are they up to? Will we feel safe? Open borders? Ladies, will you feel safe with all these people running around? Open borders, with Beto approving it, will destroy this country. I said, open borders will destroy our country and our way of life. Obama wanted open borders, so did Hillary. She said so. Beto will too. Our country now is prospering as never before. Unemployment is at its lowest. It's been in years. Look in the paper today, 3.7%. It hasn't been that low since '69. Both Bushes, Obama, even Reagan. Less unemployment for even blacks, Latinos, women. There was even a statement that said unskilled workers are working. Even their unemployment numbers are low. Now Reagan did not even do this, and he certainly didn't do it this soon. Are we through? I got interrupted.
Half a minute left.
Yeah, it happened.
This time is stolen from the dog.
Okay, I might come back later and finish this. All right, Reagan did do some of that, but it took his second term. Trump hasn't even had 2 years yet. Obama said the jobs weren't coming back, but they did. But do you understand that with Beto and Democrats, this will all be reversed? You will have more people looking for jobs. And how about,
Okay.
could I come back later for another 5?
Yep.
I have a personal story from this afternoon
You're done.
that I'll tell you, if I have another chance.
Next up.
Okay, who's next?
Me, of all people.
Right, okay, we're done.
Time me, Susan.
Well,
Push my button, baby.
mumbles or not, go ahead.
Push my button. And then come and get me. So tell me, Tom, because I don't have a timer up here.
You have a timer back there.
Well, I have one back there. First of all, I want to thank our speaker for coming tonight. And I can't see because the light's shining in my face. Has anybody read the candidates' campaign issues? Anybody?
I've read it.
One person? 17 of them. Okay. The veterans issue is pretty straightforward, and most of us would say, yeah, okay. 16 of them are pretty socialist. If you put a price tag on them, which our speaker did not do, it would be no different than our candidate who lost to Hillary in the primary last year, between 20 and 30 billion dollars over a 10-year period. The fact is, he says, I'll give you, I'll give you, I'll give you, I'll give you. You go and read them today. I spent 3 hours reading through them, more than once. Gimme, 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 gimme. Well, guess what? I didn't work for all those years to hand it out to people who want it. When my neighbor is down the street hungry, I will go and feed them. And I have done it. I don't know if any of you have. I have done it. I am a charitable person. You can call me up whatever you want to. Nasty names. But I have taken good care of my neighbors, and I do care for them. But I also know as an accountant, when I send my money off to D.C., and they skim their part of it off, and they send pieces of it back down to the states that they want to send it to, that is not necessarily going to the person 3 doors down from me, who's the husband and wife that both lost their job. They have 3 kids at home, and they don't have any food in the refrigerator. And as a charitable person, I had gone into apartments when there was nothing in the refrigerator, there was nothing in the pantry, and guess what? I gave them a double dose. Because if you don't have some discretion over what you do, then you're not really doing your job. And I've gone up to a door and called on a home, and they had nice cars in the driveway, a big screen TV playing in the living room, and they looked like they were a lot better off than I was. Guess what? They didn't get a bag of Thanksgiving. So we have to have some discretion, we have to have some locality. Beto is probably an ideal person to represent the El Paso part of Texas. Although his name is O'Rourke, it's not, Hispanic. He's ideal for that, but he does not represent the qualities of the state of Texas. When I helped Tom with the campaign a few years ago, that included East Dallas County and 6 counties southeast of us. I went to more of those campaigns than anybody would want to talk about. And I was happy to do that. But most of the state of Texas has become far more conservative than I will work my tail off to reach in my pocket to give people money who say they want to have these benefits. The Congress promises, the Constitution promises life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, right?
No, the Declaration of Independence says that.
Declaration of Independence, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong piece of paper. They all came at the same time, almost same time, same period of time. So we're entitled to life, liberty, and but the fact is we have gutless people who will decide that because on a national basis they think a certain group of people is entitled to something, that they are entitled to it. Well, guess what? They didn't come and ask some of us.
I think we really need to do a lot more digging and researching about the people we elect. I'm personally not that happy with Mr. Cruz. I was hoping the Democrats would have provided somebody much better than Beto to run for office, because then I could vote for him. Because I'm certainly no fan of Ted Cruz. He's got a lot of black marks against him. But when I did my research on Beto, I found an enormous number of red flags. His family has a history of connection to drug cartels. That indicates to me major question marks on who is funding him, because they have found numerous money situations that the IRS has sealed. The Freedom of Information Act has been prevented from digging into it, and this has major red flags. The guy, I don't trust him. I think he's a crook waiting to happen, and he's playing on people's emotions, and he's not dealing with the facts. The fact that he's dealing with socialism, that's a good sales pitch, but it never pans out too well. I too am very much into healthcare. I bet you I can come up with 100 times better ideas than he'll ever come up with to solve healthcare crisis problems. In fact, here's one that I just came up with the other day. I happen to know doctors that have invented cancer cures. Well, guess what? None of your health insurance that's given to you by the government under the ACA, which, by the way, everybody that makes under 138% of the federal poverty level has access to tax credits that pay for your health insurance. So there's no such thing as people out there suffering without health insurance unless they choose not to avail themselves of the free tax money that's available to pay for their health insurance. That's a bunch of malarkey. Now, far more troubling to me is his activity towards trying to set up anti-AR-15 talks and anti-Second Amendment stuff. That he's bit the farm there on me. But when you launder money for drug cartels have traditionally been only happy selling drugs until within the last 10 years they got into human trafficking, because there's more money in human trafficking, and so they got into that. Well, if you haven't noticed lately, under the Trump administration, there's been certain executive orders passed against arresting people that have been involved with human trafficking and confiscating all of their wealth. There's about 51,701 sealed indictments in the federal court system right now. That's a lot of criminals. That's a lot of criminals that are about to go down. And I'll bet you money, a lot of them are people on the left that are engaged in human trafficking. You care about kids, you don't care about criminals getting into office, especially those that are deeply connected to drug cartels out of Mexico.
our speaker, are we ready, Susan?
Okay,
Are you ready? Well, our speaker brought up the principle that I've heard from rabbis called lashon hara, speaking ill of another, which actually in the Hebrew tradition is equated with murdering that individual. I think it is important, however, that we do examine our political candidates, because this is the process. If you're going to be an intelligent voter, you really have to know who you are voting for. I don't know a whole lot about the O'Rourke family's connections to crime, or if that's even real. I do know there are folks who said that Lee Harvey Oswald was working in Fair Play for Cuba with a Rafa Cruz. That there are pictures of Rafa Cruz, and that's Ted's dad. So we have some interesting connections here that I don't think the Democrats are doing due diligence on Ted Cruz, perhaps. Digging a little deeper. But we really need to know our candidates. The thing that disturbs me, I would say, the most, we have a divided America. We need to be honest about it. All these calls for unity, I think, this is good emotional food for the soul, but I don't think it's confronting the reality that not only do we have a divided America, we've got a divided media to the point where you have right and left getting their information from completely different sources saying completely different things. And so you have competing realities. Really what we've got is we have a form of a socio-psychotic break, in a way, where I think, especially when if Sleepy Jeff Sessions ever gets off the dot or goes bye-bye, perhaps when some of these indictments start rolling out, I think it's going to be bipartisan indictments. But I think there's going to be some real head spinning at who's going down with a lot of the criminal activity. And it's going to be, we have a challenge ahead of us in the next few months, however things turn out, that we need to just be civil to each other. We really need to be civil, even if we're on, pole opposites on a lot of these subjects. So that's my cautionary note is, I would say if Beto gets elected to the Senate, the gun shows are going to explode here in Dallas, and we're going to have to take the crown from Obama and give it to Beto O'Rourke for Gun Salesman of the Year.
Right. Well, as a outsider really to this august political system, one that doesn't agree with it but is often amazed by it, actually I did listen to what Beto was talking about. He did impress me a little bit. I think that thinking about the greater good always strikes me to be the way to go. What we have seen for the last few decades is that the particular vested interests seem to be getting along mightily, where the wealth is certainly going to the top and not to the bottom. Yes, the economy is doing well. Damn it should, given the tax boost it's got. Now the smear often laid at Democrats is, tax and spend. Well, what we see is no tax, but monumental spending, which used to be a heinous crime. Well, this is what Trump has done. The problem is the country as a whole is not paying its way in the world, and it's not paying its way at the federal level either. So I do think that a person coming along and saying, look guys, we have to look at the whole picture. In fact, this is no more than a magnification of what Keynes said in terms of, because he invented macroeconomics. Heretofore, it was all microeconomics. It was what happens to the price of apples, the price of gasoline, but not looking at the interaction of the whole enchilada, so to speak. So yes, I think that if what this country does need is somebody who looks at the whole picture, at the health of the whole country, including the very poorest. Because right now, the very poorest are getting poorer. In fact, the real wage has gone down over the last 40 years. Oh yes, Jim, it has. It's gone down. The real wage, not the nominal wage, but the real wage, the actual buying power has gone down on a relative sense. And most of it has gone to the top 1%, if not they've taken everything actually. And so someone that wants to look at the greater good, would win my vote. And now I certainly think that somebody against Ted Cruz, who I believe to be a despicable individual, an antichrist, if ever there was one.
Margaret?
Yes. He is deeply religious, like many of them, but profoundly unchristian. All right? You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
Yes.
He's an adherent to the Old Testament, but has never read the New Testament. All right? And there's and that's my point about, I will refer you to Chris Hedges. It's on YouTube. Remember an hour-long speech about the Christian fascists in this country, amongst other people. It's quite interesting listening to, and I commend all of you to listen to it and think about the country, actually. What has gone on in the last 40 years is the greed of the few have trashed the lives of the many. And when you see people being thrown at their homes by these criminal bankers, for example, throwing their belongings thrown into the street, okay, which happened in the 30s, well, it's happening today. Because people aren't making it in this country. Now, if Beto's going to help that, he would get my vote. Certainly Ted Cruz would not. He's not about to help anybody, only promote himself and his nonsensical ideas.
I'd like to thank the speaker tonight. She gave me some food for thought. We do live in a divided country, and it's been growing, gets worse as we move along. I think some of the things historically, like someone pointed out earlier, when they adopted the Constitution of the United States in 1787, there's all kinds of compromise, commerce compromise, compromise on representation in the House of Representatives. And they were able to work those things out. So the 3/5 compromise, which was not good to my ancestors, but that was a compromise. We don't see that. The thing that bothers me about some of us, we see everything the Democrats do, and some of it's not real, but we can't see what Republicans do. Our great Speaker, House Senate Majority Leader, President Obama nominated a very qualified candidate that would have passed the Senate if he'd have brought it up. He wouldn't bring it up. But he couldn't wait to get Kavanaugh's, and so in the 2 or 3 days of the FBI, they didn't find anything that was already known. And the people that had the information, they didn't interview. So I don't think that's a fair assessment of it. Because when you think about The rich people like socialism. We get more tax breaks than we spend for other programs. But that's okay. So we as the people are about to look at this thing from what's fair for all of us. And I hear criticism of things, but I don't hear a solution. And that's what we need. We the people need to come up with solutions to deal with these issues. And I know from my own personal experience, if I'm angry, I'm totally not logical. And I know if I'm afraid, I'm not logical. And that's a truism. I think all of us experience that. So that's what we have when President Trump started off. He started off demonizing Latinos. And that just adds kindle to the fire. And then he was down in Mississippi mocking Dr. Byrd, Dr. Ford. And I thought that was terrible. And I think the outburst that Judge Kavanaugh manifest, he admitted himself in an op-ed yesterday. If that's the kind of judge he is, I'm sorry that he's on the court. And he almost threatened people. What goes around comes around. I don't think that's what we want. And as far as unemployment is down, but the only thing that's happened is the tax cut law passed. They've done some regulation. They're going to increase costs because one, that get away from the efficiency standards of automobiles, the tariffs are going to cost more money for us. And we need to look at some of these things and not get so ideologically caught up in this stuff and look at what's best for all of us. And that is not what we've historically done. We've always had some people we thought would do stud work. My ancestors did it. Now the Latinos are coming up there. They're doing it. And we need to have a fair system, but we create an environment where people hate because of the way they're treated. And if they ever get in a position, they'll do the same thing to you. So that's what I think we need to do, look at, because, and even on the jobs, President Obama asked 3 times for money to retrain the people who lost their jobs, and a stipend for them to get by. And the Republicans wouldn't fund it. And so that wasn't a gift. That was an investment in our people. Thank you.
I guess I'm the last one standing.
No.
Oh, you want?
Gotta start second round.
Oh.
Ray has more, I have more.
But
Second.
you want to speak, Tom?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to thank our speaker for doing a great job here tonight. And I forgot to mention something earlier. Michele was awarded a full scholarship to Women's Candidate School of Yale University. That was very recently. We have a divided country. There's no question about it. People are fighting amongst themselves. We can't seem to get our mind together. And something I remember from years ago, when you have a choice for candidates, generally you look at society in descending order. You like yourself the best and the rest of society in descending order. And as a result, for candidates, you never really like them. Most people don't. They have a choice between someone they don't like and someone they can't stand. That's generally how you vote. And in this particular election, the guy I can't stand is Ted Cruz, but that's neither here nor there. And that's why I'm from Beto O'Rourke. But that's kind of a small way of looking at it, but it's a reality that you have to deal with. And if you're good in life and you treat people right, you won't be in that category where they hate you. So that's my view. Our society is geared a lot by money, and we have the best Congress money can buy. I've said this before, and we have to deal with that. And maybe Beto can. He cross the aisle, he can do things, but In my view, what will Congress vote for? Maybe free airtime, the last 90 days of a general election. They'll get to keep the money they raise to get free airtime. They'll go for that. Because there's no history of a challenger being an incumbent in this century. It hasn't happened because they didn't have the money to do it. So then if that were to happen, some challengers would beat some incumbents and then they'd end up representing the people who did the electing instead of representing the people buying their vote in Washington. And when that happens, then they can put tariffs on corporations overseas like Apple that produces everything in another country and ships it back here. Then you'd end up with jobs here instead of watching the corporations leave town on you. And then you might be able to shorten the workday and put everybody back to work. Then you'd have more people working paying taxes and less people not working draining taxes. Everyone get a true full benefit of increased tax revenue without raising taxes. Less bills to pay when people aren't working because they'd be working. That's my view anyway. But I give this back to our speaker. You get to comment on all the comments that came up here and get the last word. Oh, wait a minute. Ray, did you want to say something else?
Well,
Yeah, actually, I've got a short thing I
There's
was.
3 of us.
I have to go, Tom. She has to
All right.
go. Let her in.
Last word.
If you don't mind.
No.
Let her have the last word.
Get the next last word.
Well, first of all, let me say that I want to thank all of you that got up here and spoke your piece. I think it's wonderful, really. This is America. We get to say our free to speak our minds. I love it. I will say this. I have to go back to myself and say, my response to everything goes back to 3 questions. I work from 3 questions. And I respond to everything based on that. For me personally. So, my first question is, who are you? Why are you here? And where do you want to go? So anytime things get really hairy and I find myself getting, very anxious and, upset about what's going on in the world, I go back to that. And I say, I'm responsible for my soul. I'm responsible for who I choose to be in any given situation. And in this situation, in this election, okay, I'm doing my best to stick to that. And I do not agree with a lot of things that Beto says, myself personally. I don't think anybody in the right mind, if they're true to themselves and honest, would. I think we all have, well, I would do it this way. And so I heard a lot here tonight. Let me address one of them. I cannot entertain a conspiracy theory about Beto's family being part of the cartel. It may or may not be true, but I do not have any evidence in front of me to tell me that it is. So to me, okay, to engage and give that energy, okay, is doing what I referenced before. And putting out there the things that are not necessarily proven to be true. And so I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm just saying it hasn't been proven. And I, quite frankly, this tonight is the first time ever. As far as socialism goes, what I think I'm hearing, okay, is a government that gives away everything to people who don't earn it is socialism, and I'm not for that. So I would have to say to that is, if helping other people and doing to others as I want them to do to me is socialism, then I would have to say I'm probably a Christian socialist. And I think in a lot of ways, when you follow the life of Christ, he was a socialist. He believed in all of that. So As far as the open borders goes and all that, as far as I know, Beto has said that he is deeply concerned about, he is definitely not for putting up a bunch of walls. What he does want to focus on, okay, and fund, okay, is responding to drug trafficking and human trafficking. So if he's out there calling for that and wanting to fund that, okay, in Congress, I fail to see the connection, because that deals directly to somebody who would be a member of the cartel. So I would have to say that that's his position, and until somebody proves to me otherwise, I'm just going to remain saying I have to just believe what he says and see what he does. So as far as the division goes, let me leave with this. We're nothing right now compared to the way it was during the Civil War. That was the ultimate. Abraham Lincoln had to deal with absolutely the most worst form, okay, of separation in this country. And if you recall, he said that a nation divided against itself cannot stand. And I agree with that. I don't think they can stand. In my own life, I know that compromise and collaborating with each other for a higher purpose, the willingness to work together, that's the key. The willingness to work together for a higher purpose is important. I had an incredible, wonderful 50 years of marriage. My husband passed away this year. And I can tell you what made it successful, and I have my own way to describe it. I called it, learning how to dance with each other. Okay? Learning how to dance with each other. So when you are on the dance floor, okay, and the two of you are first starting, okay, and okay, one steps on the other one's foot, okay, get it right. But you don't give up. And so sooner or later you figure out, well, if I put this foot back, you put yours forward, that can work. And so we start focusing on that, and we keep doing it. And before we know it, you don't even have to think about it. And we're like dancing around the floor like, free. So I would say my wish for this country is that we love each other enough and love our country enough to learn how to dance with each other. Thank you, I love you, and thank you for all your comments. I gotta run.
I have a short comment. Speaking of folks who passed away, I had a friend pass away October 1st, and he had been pretty much an invalid for the last few years. And to show the kind of human we can be, he was a tweetmeister, and he made his reputation tweeting anti-Trump material. And when he passed away, the last count I know of, he got 1,900 condolence tweets from his audience. And this is someone I dealt with. Sometimes I'd have to say, let's just not talk politics. But I just want to bring out the fact that, we can work with each other. Now, my other point is being of one mind. Our dear sister back there didn't want Ray to speak his mind on this, and he hadn't connected it yet, so I can accept that criticism. But there's a danger of being of one mind, and the most quintessential point I've ever run into was when I got a short interview with a foreigner, a European, by the name of Alf, and I was asking him because he had kind of a socialist background in an organization he belonged to, and I kept questioning him about individuality, because I want to know this. I want to know individual versus collective, group thought, and so forth. And I would ask a question about, well, what did you feel about it? And he would say, the question never arose. We were all of one mind. And he repeated this several times. The question never arose. We were all of one mind. And Alf was a member of Hitler's most feared and deadly unit, the Einsatzgruppen. So I just caution everyone that being of one mind is not in and of itself a positive thing.
There is, let me bring my phone up here. There's an article you can find where you can get these accusations against the Beto family. It's how I found it. The website is ghost.report. And like I said, you Google Beto and criminal on DuckDuckGo. You don't Google it, you search for it. Don't use Google. Google will not give you dirt on leftist politicians. They will hide that stuff. If you go to DuckDuckGo, you'll find it. And also worth mentioning, because everybody brought this up about Miss Ford, and I agree with certain people here that I've had this discussion with, that maybe she suffered from multiple personality disorder based on the different personalities she exhibited while testifying. And this could have many things to do with her areas of expertise in mind control, which she has authored papers on how to implant memories into people's minds, which indicates to me a very dire and evil person.
Amen.
Miss Ford. She was involved with MK Ultra and the CIA, and she worked at Stanford recruiting people into the CIA. Her grandfather was high up in the CIA. So the investigation that would have continued, if it had continued, man, there's no doubt in my mind she would have gone to jail for perjury. It's stuff that could have come out.
I don't think she could go to jail for perjury for the very reason you said. If she had an implanted memory, she's telling the truth according to what she knows.
She believes what she's saying, even though it could have been an implant. But then she basically committed perjury and would have gone to jail for perjury.
It's not perjury, it's what she remembers.
Well, she said that she did not have access to knowledge on how to control results on a lie detector. And that was a blatant lie, because witnesses have come out and said that she's actually hired to help people beat lie detectors, which is a blatant act of perjury. She would go to jail just for that.
I'll add a little bit to that statement. She worked with a Russian double agent in the United States who defected from Russia. He was tried in absentium in Russia and given a 26-year sentence. And she,
Gentlemen, please.
And she assisted him in this kind of mind control hypnosis so that he could pass a polygraph. And I think given the fact that all the way back after World War II, Joseph Mengele was brought over here by the OSS, now the CIA, because specifically of his experiments into mind control. And the CIA has institutes set up around the country where they'll take a candidate, the candidate doesn't have to be asked, take him off the street, run him through a mind control program, and that's probably where all these insane shooters causing all these crazy things are coming from in this nation. I think all of them should be put under psychiatric treatment to see if that can be discerned. Keanu Reeves left this country because of his total disgust with Hollywood in their pedophilia their Satanism and their sacrifice of children as part of their satanic rituals. Now, he was overt about this, and that's why he left the country and moved to Italy. When I first came to the first meeting, when we were at the, what is the restaurant?
Cafeteria?
Yeah, the Island Park Cafeteria. I came as a guest of a friend, and I walked out of there and I was like, oh my God, what's going on here? Because I majored in physics in college. I went through law school. I also liked art and music and sang in a lot of choirs and things like that. Traveled 3 months in Europe to study the roots of our civilization by art and architecture, and then went and lived in Germany for a while. And went to language schools where I met people from all over the world, which I cherished because I wanted to look into them and see the commonality beyond all of the facade of personality. I could not understand what was going on with this group back then. I just walked out of there dumbfounded. And I thought about it, and I realized what we were dealing with. Now that the milieu here has changed somewhat. It's more of a blend of so-called right and left and so forth. The group back then very predominantly made all their decisions based on emotion, not logic and reason. And that's why I've said numerous times from this podium that every degree of emotion necessarily alters your perception of reality. And that is why it is so important, particularly when it's a firm emotional issue, to push those emotions aside and think logically. This thing with Kavanaugh and Ford, there's a lot to that story we will never know, and none of us in this room will ever have personal knowledge of the facts of any of that big controversy. All we know is this: we choose to watch CNN or Fox or whatever. The sources we choose is the information we take in because it feels good to us. You should go to all sources and analyze everything. It takes a lot of time to do that because the sources have just proliferated. Now, dear Mr. Blewett, whom I respect greatly, I have one contrary viewpoint.
Okay, I'm glad this is one.
But I will talk about it this one.
That's only one.
You mentioned that Kavanaugh's statement that what goes around comes around was a threat.
Yeah.
That was an emotional characterization that I think has no reality whatsoever.
His comments were written down.
He stated
They read from his comments.
Can I talk? He stated a universal principle that what goes around comes around. And the Democratic Party is going to find out this November that it's coming around with a huge voter trend moving over to the Republicans, because what they did in that whole thing, holding it off to the last moment, embarrassing the hell out of both of those people publicly. Well, neither of them wanted that, and it could have and should have been done in a private senatorial meeting, but they waited until there wasn't time for that. That is despicable conduct.
Amen.
And I think both sides of the parties are going to see that and evaluate it for what it was. It's not that we need to drain the swamp. We need to pull the chain and flush the damn toilet in Washington, D.C. I am absolutely for term limitations. Absolutely for it. These people get up there and they get bought off by so many millions of dollars. I mean, look at how much money the Clintons and Soros and people like that have put into controlling this country. We need to eliminate that kind of stuff.
As long as everybody's calm. May I speak?
Go for it.
I have devoted days watching and reading about all of this, and it turns out Dr. Ford may not even be a doctor as far as I know. She is not a psychologist. There's no trace of a license for her to practice psychiatry in any state in the United States. So that's an out-and-out lie. Also, she actually had a date evidently that night that she claimed to have all this happen. She had a boyfriend who broke up with her that same night, took her home, which she denied the whole thing. Also, her handwriting is that of a child, a scribble. And any handwriting analyst looks at that. That is not the writing of an adult at all. Has anybody looked at the writing? I looked at it.
That qualifies her to be an MD.
Yeah. It is worse than any handwriting I've ever seen. And this pretense, this voice that she used was so artificial.
What do you mean?
Ray.
Boy, we're waiting for you.
We got to say your mother.
Okay, by popular demand, I'll finish
Be
this.
careful what you pray for.
I have said that the way to reverse our surging, wonderful economy, and also that with the business of unemployment and employment, the way to reverse all that, have more people looking for jobs and the economy to slow down and less money, the way to do that is to elect Beto and any other Democrat. How can that be denied? We had 8 years of Obama and we were suffering through that. Now there is optimism like we've never seen before. Beto is funded in part by George Soros. Somebody finally mentioned that. Soros is a billionaire political activist. He wants to turn America upside down.
Amen.
He wants to change America fundamentally. That's what Obama wanted to do. He pays protesters to demonstrate and protest at rallies. Did you know that?
Balcony of the Senate.
Did you know that these people who are protesting, shouting, screaming, making fools of themselves, agitating, they're paid. Many of them are paid to do that. They're brought in from other cities. Soros wants Beto, and he's financing his campaign. This is our country, the best on earth. Our system of government, our capitalistic economy has brought more common, ordinary people out of poverty than any other country.
Amen.
Do we want to go back to a Democratic Party that wants to change us fundamentally? And who has apparently lost all sense of decency, honor, and respect for their fellow man, that they would destroy a good man like Kavanaugh, and who'll be a great judge. It's our decision as to where we want to go. Today, I talked to a friend of mine. I hadn't met his wife. I told Jim this story. He doesn't shock too easy, but he jumped when I told him. I said to the wife, I said, "Well, you're local?" "Oh no," she said, "I came from El Paso." El Paso. Well, this wasn't a political thing. I didn't want to get involved. 15, 20 minutes later, they're on the television nearby, Beto ad. Okay, I couldn't resist. I said, "All right, you came from El Paso, grew up there. Did you know the O'Rourkes?" Immediately she said, "Oh yeah, they were running drugs into Mexico." And my wife jumped. Later on, I talked to her about that. Did she say that the O'Rourkes and Beto were dealing drugs across the border into Mexico? Yep. What we talked about.
Cocaine.
Some of us have talked about that tonight. I think where there's smoke, there's fire. That is happening.
That's what I was going to say.
Where there is smoke, there is fire.
Ray,
How can we trust a guy like that?
One quick question. Which direction were the drugs going? Were they coming from Mexico or to Mexico? Because that's kind of important.
She didn't say.
Either one is criminal.
Yeah, good point.
Come on, Ray.
No, okay.
All the dope in this country is coming from Mexico.
Yeah. Somebody might be.
Close to 100% of it.
Well, I'll start off a bit tonight. The softies have gone home. I brought some stuff up here and I just flat didn't mention it. I did mention to you the 12 facts. All you have to do is go on the computer and look up O'Rourke's name. I challenge any of you who has half a brain who intends to vote in the fall election to go look that up. I would say this about his opponent. I don't find him appealing at all. His father's a lot more appealing than he is. He's vociferous and vocal and energetic and interesting to listen to. Small man, wiry, and
he preaches a good sermon.
Amen. And Obama is, I mean, not Obama, excuse me. Forgive me, Obama, I'm so sorry. Ted is sort of blah. He might be a good judge sitting on a federal court. He served, he did his internship at the Supreme Court, and he probably has the mind and the disposition to do that, but he's not merely the politician. You put those two guys up at adjoining podiums in a debate, and O'Rourke is taller, better looking, more vocal.
Younger, less experienced.
It'll be just like JFK debating Richard Nixon in a way. He will outshine him. So that's my political thing. But go back, I would urge you to go back and read those. It'll take you about 2 hours to read through them. So dedicate the time. But if you don't know what that guy is standing for, what his political issues are, as a human being living here, you cannot justify going into the voting booth and pulling the lever.
That's true.
That's my whole vocal on the politics. Also, today, in the Dallas Morning News, I copied out, or I printed out an article. O'Rourke draws big crowds in Texas, but his voters tend not to vote. So they're concerned. The Morning News, which is still very left-wing, it has their doubts about whether he'll be able to sustain in the voting booth what he's generating in the auditoriums. I have no earthly idea. The Wall Street Journal yesterday came out and said O'Rourke struggles to get the loyalty of the young Texans. Well, when you look at the young anybody's, I don't care in the United States, Clarence will, as if anybody deals with it in education, there are people coming all the way up through the educational system, reaching age 30, and they're juvenile delinquents. A lot of them are living at home in their parents' basement if they're living in that part of the country. In other words, they're home playing games and they're not even out contributing to the workforce. There are more jobs than people out there. What are they doing? They ain't working. So I don't give a flip what comes out of their mouth. I don't think they have a voice in American politics if they don't get out and contribute to the economy. So that's my statement, but I would encourage you to read these comments. They're not my comments, but they give you somewhat a picture of what the candidacy is like, and then go read the platform. Not very many of you will be able to get to the end of it without rolling your eyes a time or two. Thank you very much.
We're ready to close it out, John.
Close her out.
Close her out.
Well, that's it for tonight, I guess.
Ending number one.
Ending number one, yes.
Ending number two.
It was great to have their speaker here, and it was good to hear everybody had their opinion lodged up here. So we'll let it go at that. Thank you.